makes me cringe to just use the word beginner, but here we are. John and I are going to talk about what it's like to be a beginner, what it's like to choose to be a beginner at something, the topics of curiosity versus discomfort versus commitment, and all of the things that go into why we choose to be a beginner, why we don't choose to be a beginner, and how we can support ourselves as we go into new ventures. I Could Talk to You All Day is a podcast about what it means to be a leader while also being human. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz.
And I'm John Spears, and we coach executives and leaders just like you about shifting from surviving at work and home to thriving in the life you've always wanted.
We're so glad you're here.
Let's get the conversation started.
John J. Spears.
What's up, Lauren M. Lefkowitz?
How's it going?
It's going really well. How are you?
I am long pause. Good, I think. Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah. Look, I think I'm overall good.
Yeah.
And also some hard things have happened the last couple of weeks that have brought down the good. But I think my baseline is good.
Yeah.
No, and that's like a nice feeling to feel like my foundation is coming to solid ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I think as I get older and as I develop more complex relationships and there's longer histories and marriage and kids who are teens, like to your point, like things are generally good, but there's always like something. There's always like a little something somewhere. I mean, like just look at the world. Even if things are great with me, there's war and there are challenges and there's an election. And so like all of that stuff impacts me. I'm sure it impacts everyone in a certain way. So I would agree. I am like I like how you said this, like the foundation is good. Like I feel like the state of the union is strong. Things are good, the foundation's good, and then there's like little bits and pieces.
Right.
To
Yeah.
work through.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I feel like old me, former me, was very much always like really striving to keep my head above water and feeling like I was drowning in everything and like someday things would be good. And I think I forget to have appreciation for all of the work I've done on myself and for my surroundings, that like I think sometimes I sit in a thing that has happened or a way that I'm feeling and I generalize it as like this is how things are.
Yeah.
So it's good to recognize sometimes that like my baseline is good.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about this, particularly in our coaching program a few years ago and with clients. Like, is the whole day awful, or did like something happen for a minute that was just And then we have a choice. What do you want to do with that? Do you want it to affect our mood the whole day, the next week, the next few weeks, the next month? And obviously there are things that happen in our lives that require our attention that could be challenging. But like most of the time for me, this little tiny thing that happened like triggered me, and I get to decide, am I gonna let it just throw my whole entire day off? Or am I gonna see it for what it is, accept it, be okay with it, and then like make a choice about how I want it to go the rest of the day or whatever.
I love that you brought that up because I'm thinking about yesterday, and I had a bad interaction with a medical professional yesterday, and it impacted my whole day. I didn't get anything else done. I thought about it all day. I was mad about it all day. And it was 30 minutes of my time and of that medical professional's time. And today I'm A-okay.
Yeah.
Fine, if you will, even though fine is a trap. But yesterday I let it be the 30 minutes that determined my whole day.
Yeah.
Today, I'm not doing that. Today, it hasn't stuck with me. It's not carrying through my week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have gratitude for that. But I also have an appreciation for like, I did let it take over my whole day yesterday. And so like now yesterday's behind me. So I have a question for you, John. Tell me about one thing that you've tried once or twice that was new to you, that you were terrible at, and that you didn't really care that you were terrible at it.
The one thing that came up right away was golf. I've recently been, is it going to
Uh-huh.
a little, I don't know what are they called. And I'm not good at it. I am like legit not good. Or I should say like, there are sometimes I'm like decent and sometimes we're like, I can't hit the ball. But I also like don't really care because I'm not going to be a golfer at 44. And I've already found something else that I really love that I'm investing a lot of time and energy in. So golf.
Okay, cool. Now tell me one thing that you've tried once or twice that you're terrible at that you really want to be good at.
Oh, so many things come to mind. I would say the thing that comes up is like making bread, more specifically sourdough. I think like everyone remembers the whole sourdough craze during COVID. Like I got all the stuff. I got like the proofing little basket thing. And I tried, and I'm just not good with instructions generally. And I'm really not good with instructions when it comes to like baking and food. And I would really like I've tried it a few times and it's just not that bread is not proofed. It's either overproofed, underproofed. It's like eh. But I would really love to be good at like making bread. It's so stupid.
It's not. It's a thing that like you're right. It was a craze and a bunch of people showed their beautiful breads online and like people were really getting into it. I want you to be good at baking bread too.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Huh. How
I
about
like
you?
that. So one thing I've tried once or twice that I'm terrible at, and I don't care is like basically every sport. Like I was born with three left feet and two right arms. Like I don't know what happened in the universe putting all of the ingredients for me together, but sports was like not included in my package. And every couple of years, I will try something. And it could be something that's like, you know, everybody's playing a little volleyball on the beach and like, come on in, Lauren, join us. Like, no, 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 I'll spectate. No, give it a try. Right. And so I've stopped. I finally stopped trying sports because I don't care about them. I will like hold your stuff. I'll come and cheer you on. I would love to watch your softball game and drink a Diet Coke while I'm doing that. Count me in to like be with the group, but I've also been kicked off a volleyball court. Like, oh, maybe you were right, Lauren. Maybe you should just, keep score for us. And like, I don't care. I have other good qualities and I do other things really well. And like for my own well-being, I stretch, I walk, I do what I can. And I've got some muscular issues that stop me from doing long distance, long stamina, anything anyway. And I just don't really care. Um, and it's kind of nice to feel like I don't want to.
Yeah.
Not like I can't and I feel bad, so don't ask me to. It's like, yeah, I'm not really interested in that. Something that I have tried probably more than once or twice, and I keep giving up on, and I keep still wanting to be good at it, is cooking.
Yeah.
I am an amazing baker. If you invite me to your event and you're like, bring dessert, I will be like unloading the car for 10 minutes with all of the cookies and the trifle and all the things that I'm making. If you ask me to bring a chicken dish, I like immediately break out into a cold sweat because raw chicken to me feels like very daunting. And I have learned how to cook a couple of times. I even took a cooking class for single people in my like early 30s. I'm in my late 40s now.
Wait, hold on. This was like a class specifically for single people to teach them how to cook.
To teach them how to cook for one or two people. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the class, I did okay with like the direct instructions. But I I couldn't get myself to do it. And this is what our topic is today, is the things that we are beginners at, being a beginner, and deciding whether we're willing to be a beginner, how we decide to be a beginner, when are we choosing to be a beginner versus when we have to be a beginner. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And for me, this is such an interesting topic for professionals who are leaders, because we get really good at a specific skill set and we get called a subject matter expert. We get called the leader of, we get called the go-to person for. And there are a lot of things that I think we can then sort of attribute to, well, I know this, so I can figure out that.
Right.
Or this has been handed to me and I have to figure it out. There's no choice, so I'm going to figure it out. And then there's the stuff that we can choose to figure out and choose to be a beginner at, that I think a lot of people shy away from. So just like as I'm introducing the topic of being a beginner, being a leader, and being a beginner, what comes to your mind?
I think you kind of mentioned this when you were sort of setting and framing the conversation, but as adults and as professionals in careers, we're not really rewarded for being a beginner. We're really rewarded for expertise, deep knowledge, knowing how to do something really, really well, or a topic or an issue. And so I think partially culture rewards that. And I think as we get older, we don't like being a beginner. We don't like the newness and the discomfort and the challenge that something new brings to our ego, and to our sense of self. And so I think oftentimes we shy away from that. I can think of even ways that this is such an important topic for leaders. You're new at a relationship, you're a beginner at a relationship, you have a new employee, a new direct report, a new peer. Like that is being a beginner at something, because you might know how to have good relationships, but you're learning how this person works, what this person needs, how they operate, what their motivations are. And oftentimes we don't bring, and I'm sure we're going to get there in a few minutes, we don't bring the kind of skills, the curiosity, the openness that's required to be successful. And I think, for me, when I began to get comfortable with the discomfort, getting out of my comfort zone, being a novice, being new at something, I think that's when I really started living a really fulfilling, meaningful life. And before I was just sort of, playing very small and staying with the known, and I wasn't very open to things. So anyway, I think that's a long kind of roundabout way to answer your question, but it's it's such an important topic because not only are there natural points in our lives where we're beginners, new relationships, marriage, being an adult, getting a new job, getting a new portfolio, learning a new skill. Those are all things that like sort of naturally happen in our lives for a lot of people. But there's also like the pace of change that we're experiencing in our world, innovation, new things. Like, one of the things I hear everyone talking about is AI. Like, people have to be a beginner in that in some ways and get comfortable with that and learn that and bring us sort of the right mindset and way of being to that in order to keep up with the world. And if they don't, my view is they're going to get left behind. So like, I just think like it's a necessity for us to be talking about this in a way that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about being a beginner once you're an established professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned a couple of things, that can have us shy away from doing new things, from choosing to be a beginner or from being assigned being a beginner at
Yeah.
something. What comes up for you? Like feelings in your body or thoughts when you're assigned something new, or when you choose to do something new and you sit down to do it and you have absolutely no idea where to start. Like what comes up for you?
Ah, as you were asking that question, got immensely uncomfortable in my body. Like I tensed up. I had this like sense of panic. My breath got really shallow. I'm doing a new thing now. I'm starting a new business. And one of the things that I'm kind of having to navigate in that is I was really good at what I did before. I could have done it in my sleep. I might not have known the answer to every challenge that came up, but I was able to get there fast because I've had years and years and years of experience navigating similar challenges. And now, this is going to answer your question. Things are just slower for me. It takes me longer to do new things because I'm learning and it's trial and error. And so, you know, before I would say when something new came up, like, it was sort of not necessarily easy for me, but like new in the context of my experience, was easy. New in this sort of context for me is like, what if I'm not as good at this as I was before? And so there's a lot of kind of limiting beliefs that I have to work through as I'm doing something new because, you know, I think as humans, we want three main things. We want a sense of security, we want a sense of control, and we want approval. And so often we outsource those things to other people. And when you're doing something new, if you're doing that, it's going to be very uncomfortable on the inside. Um, to be at a place where you're open enough and curious enough and patient enough with yourself to be able to learn the thing, get the experience, etc.
I'm so glad you brought up context because as you were saying that, as you were talking about like where you were, and I don't know that we've delved into context as a topic. But when we talk about context from a coaching perspective, it's like the scene you're in, the lens
Right.
you're looking through, the place you're coming from. And so in the context of being the COO of the company you were working for, the interim president of the company you were working for, like you knew how to do 90% of the stuff. So when a 10% change came up, there was like a foundation. Like it's almost like what we were talking about at the beginning of our conversation of having like a baseline of good. You had this like baseline of knowledge and resources and coworkers and already preset written or unwritten rules about
Right.
how things are. And now you're starting your own business, and which I'd argue you've been starting for a couple of years, as have I, right? Like
Yeah.
you you do sometimes end up being a beginner for quite a long time. Um, that, for you in that context, easy peasy to pull something else in and say like, oh, I can have this person help with this. I can ask this person how they did that. Um, but I feel sort of the same way that you do. Like my body tenses up when I think about being new, when I think about being in a beginner phase of something. My initial reaction, and this is a little woo-woo because you and I both have gotten more and more woo-woo as we've progressed in our lives. Uh, I have started dabbling in understanding my chakras. And every practitioner I've been to who does any chakra work tells me that my throat chakra is blocked,
Hmm.
which is like a little bit funny because I'm kind of mouthy, but also
Kind of mouthy.
kind of all right, just mouthy. Um, but I feel like I really speak up for myself, for my needs, for the needs of people who are my typical client, the people who work too much, the people who people please, who don't know how to set boundaries. And yet there are places in my life where either I'm uncomfortable, so I shut down and I don't say anything, or where I'm a beginner and I don't feel like I have the right to say anything. I don't feel like I belong in the place of being a beginner and expressing any level of expertise. And so my throat chakra is an area that I'm like starting to do some work on and seeing like noticing where I get blocked. But for me, being a beginner says to me that if I'm not instantly good at it, I'm gonna get mad about it.
Hmm.
So it makes me avoid it.
Yeah.
right? Like I'm afraid I'm going to fail at it. I'm afraid of looking incapable and having that be generalized for me as like, well, if you don't know this, what
Right.
else don't you know? What else can't we trust you on, Lauren? Um, and I am still a perfectionist. I try not to be, which is like perfecting imperfectionism, which is its own little oxymoron. Uh, but I hate making mistakes, and
Yeah.
I will do a lot of falling on my own sword to make up for whatever mistakes I have made. Um, and so my MO when something new comes up, when something I can be a beginner at comes up, is to either solve it so fast that it's like out of my hair or not do it at all. Just like quit. I can't do it. That's not for me. And that's what I've done with cooking. That's
Yeah.
I every couple of years I come in and I'm like, I'm gonna do it. And then I don't. Or I cook one thing and I cook it. Like if I cook a piece of chicken, John, by the time it's done, it's been sliced and diced to make sure that it's cooked and I'm not going to poison anyone. That like I may as well have just shredded it. Like there's nothing pretty to present there.
You can put it in a soup.
Like, great. Now I have to learn how to make soup.
Lauren, two things came up as you were talking. One is around context again.
Mhm.
I kind of liken this to when I started playing pickleball. When I started playing pickleball, I was new, but I was also playing with people who were new. And so like there wasn't a lot of pressure. Like everyone is kind of around the same level, skill level. So you kind of come in as a cohort. And for those of you who play pickleball, like you kind of have like an open play based on your level, like beginner, intermediate, 4.0, whatever. And so like I was playing with lots of beginners. So the pressure was like super low. It was like easy peasy. And then I remember after a few months of playing at that level, I wanted to advance. So I started playing at a higher level. And that is when I felt a lot of tension and pressure of like I was like in the big leagues, right? Like I was playing with people who had been playing for a year plus, and I still wasn't very good. And I think of this kind of looking at this from a leadership or an organizational context of, when you're beginning something and you have a cohort of people with you, it's a lot, in my experience, easier to begin like that. But if you're promoted into a new role, where there have been people who have been doing the same sorts of things before, it can be really intimidating and scary for all the reasons that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Fear of failure, making mistakes, wanting to have all the answers. And so that brings me to my like other point, which is I don't know a lot of cultures, work cultures that really promote and create a culture of trying new things, risk. We talk a lot about innovation and failure, but like being a beginner at something, doing something that might be out of your wheelhouse, I can't recall a bunch. I'd love to hear, successful organizations who are doing this, but I think that really makes a big difference because if the culture isn't kind of that like doesn't create that kind of container for
Yeah.
people to even like be motivated to try something new without being punished or whatever, then like no one's gonna do it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I have a client who um was in one department in her company, and when she came to me she was like, I got to leave this company, I have to figure out what I want to do next. And we did a lot of boundaries work, and we did a lot of future visioning to figure out like what she wanted. And one of the things that kept coming up for her was that she is curious as a human. She is always curious. She's always thinking about what could we up level? What could we do better? What could we do differently? How can we make this more efficient? And she was not in a department that embraced that. And eventually, doing the work that we did, she realized she actually wasn't ready to leave the company. She was in the wrong department.
Hmm.
She was doing the wrong kind of work. And she moved into an innovation department that exists in her company, which is like warms my heart that there are any companies that have a department focused on innovation. And she is now creating what will eventually trickle to her own department as improvements, as efficiencies, as new ways of doing things. And it's changed her life. It's changed the direction of what she's looking for whenever she looks for a new job and all of that. And her motivation is that she is curious. And I really admire that about her. And about anybody who's just willing to be a beginner and just be like an explorer. And so I wonder from your perspective, like when we are able to acknowledge our fears and the avoidance of doing new things because it's hard, we're scared, we think we might fail, we think, we're going to be uncomfortable about it. Like, what's actually great, do you think, about being a beginner?
I think there's so much that's great about being a beginner. One, I think if you look at it the right way or a different way, being a beginner can totally take all the pressure off, right? Because if you have this expectation that you like are an expert in something, there is an expectation that you're going to deliver a certain thing. But if you're a beginner, none of that really exists. People see it for what it is. And I think there could be, I found when I've tried new things and I've had the right attitude about it, an attitude that's really supportive, there is a little bit of like levity, there's lightness there, there's exploration, there's, excuse me, curiosity. And I also found that when I'm starting something new, it's just a lot easier for me to ask for help and ask
Mm.
for people to like get their thoughts on something. And so it's really created a lot of opportunity for like new connections. It's created opportunity for me to learn new things about myself and just to learn in general. And I think if we can take that mindset, if we're in that space, if we can practice asking for help, if we can practice not knowing all the answers, if we can practice not taking ourselves too seriously, if we are in that space enough, it kind of impacts our being and how we are with like everything else. And so one of the things that I really try to do for myself is get out of my comfort zone on a daily basis. I think it's so important to get out of that. So for this weekend, I took my son and my cousin and my husband and went canvassing, knocking on doors, and it was like uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Uh, big UN comfortable. It was just not a comfortable experience. And I've worked in campaigns and I've done this stuff before, but it's been a while. And it was fun, but not fun. And I think, that experience, my son is 13 and he was like, I don't like doing this. He was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not good at this. And I was like, dude, you've knocked on 5 doors. Of course you're not good at it. Like no one's expecting you to be good at this. I've been at it, I
Hmm.
haven't done this in a few years. So like, of course I'm not practiced and seasoned at it. And I think like the younger and more often we can just be in that space of discomfort and learn how to manage it and use it as like a launching point for the future as opposed to a way to keep ourselves small and constricted and in that space of safety. I mean, I just think there's so much magic in the discomfort. Even though I hate it and I don't like it, I want to get out of it as soon as I can.
Yeah, and I think that is like 13 is like the age where we start to like 11, 12, 13 is the age where we start to notice people noticing us
Yeah.
and where we start to feel a reprimand for trying something and failing, for making a mistake, for not being as good at something as someone who started before us. Like when we're 5 and 6 years old, you want me to sing a song in front of the family? I'll sing a song in front of the family. Like, of course I will. You want me to do that at 13? No, I'm going to just go hide in my room. And I think we get the wind knocked out of us
Mm.
because we then have developed these insecurities based on not just what happens to us, but the punishments or the consequences that we see other people get for not being good at something. And we
Yeah.
think, oh, I don't even want to try that. And we develop these insecurities. So for me, there's such power in deciding to try something new. And I think about like both of our paths to here today now. And the fact that we both own our own businesses, we've both come about becoming full-time coaches in a little bit of a different way, but coming from similar backgrounds professionally. And even though I keep hitting these, what I feel like brick walls, where I feel like I don't want to be a beginner, I'm not going to do it. And then I procrastinate this, the thing I don't want to do, updating my email system, for example. Like I'm changing from one email system to another. And my brain is like, don't do it. It's not going to work. Like, of course it's going to work. Right. But my beginner brain is scared of everything.
Right.
And so, I wonder, like, I'll tell you some of mine, but like, I'd love to hear from you first. Like, what are some tools that you put in place so that when you are a beginner and you do decide, like, no, I'm not going to stay in a full-time job, I'm going to look for how I can make my own business successful. No, I'm not going to take this gig that I could do in my sleep, but doesn't give me joy or bring me energy. Instead, I'm going to keep pursuing speaking engagements or whatever it is. Like, I still feel like I'm a really big beginner at a bunch of stuff and I'm doing it anyway. What are some things that you can do when you're doing beginnery kind of stuff to feel supported, to feel like, even though it's uncomfortable, you're going to do it anyway. Even though it's scary and you might fail, you're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
A really long question.
Yeah, four things kind of come up as you were talking. One is commit to doing it. And when I say commit to doing it or to learning it or to being a beginner, I mean sort of like burn the bridge, no turning back, do it. I think in life, so much stuff happens to distract us and for things to be discouraging that if you're not really committed to doing something, it's often not going to happen. For me, I'm not really committed to making bread. It's just not. And particularly, I wasn't, I said I bought all the things, I had all the supplies, I had all the instructions, but like it turned out bad one or two times, and I was like, eh. So I think really being committed and being committed actually means recommitting on a regular basis because there's breakdowns, things happen, there are challenges, things don't go our way. And so, I found with this business, like I am not going back to a full-time job. I am working on this business. Like that is my commitment. And so when things are discouraging or not going as fast as I can, I might want to like ease that pressure and ease that experience. But the fact that I'm committed means I'm not doing the other thing, all the other options I have. So I think that like mindset. The second is grace. A lot of leaders, a lot of high achieving leaders who have tons of impact, want to see it and have that experience all the time. And to be able to look at yourself and to say, hey, it's not turning out the way that I want to right now, or it's not going as fast as I want to, or whatever, I'm not good enough. That is a phrase I hear a lot, both in myself and the clients. I'm not good enough. I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Giving yourself grace, I think is so important. And the last two are one, accepting the way it is. Like for me, in any situation that's uncomfortable, whether it's being new at something or anything else, like if I have resistance to what's actually happening, if I'm not accepting this as it is, I'm not going to be able to move through it because I'm pushing it away. I'm making excuses. I'm not seeing it as it really is. And so I think being able to say, hey, I'm a beginner, I'm not great at this, is such an important thing because then you like you have a true and accurate assessment of where you are and of what know you need to get better at or what you can do better or whatever. So I think it's the third one. And the last one is I don't know about you, but like my brain is like on overdrive. I'm learning so much, trial and error, looking at data, and being new at something for me requires a ton of mental energy. And so I've just found that I need to go for like a walk every few hours or take a break or do some deep work for 40 minutes and take a 10-minute break. And that's not something I'm used to. I think I'm used to being able to power through something for hours and hours. And I think like the mental space that I'm in and like the new, I don't know, synapses or whatever happens in your brain when you're learning something new, it's happening and it's also just taxing. So I'm trying to like give myself grace there and go for walks, take breaks, read a book, take a 10-minute power nap, like do whatever I need to do to kind of like refresh my energy, because I found that when I'm immersed in something new a lot, it just takes more out of me than it used to.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you?
I think there are a couple of things that you said that really resonate with me. One is that commitment level. And I think you really like nailed it when you said you're not committed to being good at baking bread. I'm not committed to being a good cook. There are other ways for me to consume food. I'm a very tidy food assembler. And every day I manage to eat, sometimes meals, sometimes by grazing, and I have not died of starvation yet. Right. So like there are other solutions for me that feel more comfortable and get me by like pretty happily. I'm not eating cereal for 3 meals a day. I'm nourished.
Yeah.
And so it's not painful enough for me to do anything either. Right. So I think there's a combination of like curiosity and commitment to something new, and maybe it's an and, like not doing it being painful enough that of course you're going to do it. And I think about that a lot in my business, that where I was and in my career as a corporate person, I loved my career for 15 of the 20 years I was in HR. And it had to become painful enough for me not thriving in HR anymore and barely surviving as a workaholic to even begin to think about what I might want instead and start pursuing it and be willing to be a beginner in owning a business, in leaving the corporate world, in having an income that fluctuates, in not knowing where my next client is coming from. All of that, like beginner stuff, I had to get willing to do, partly because of ambition and partly because of pain, partly because of curiosity, and partly because like I was dying on the inside. And in fact, there's a quote from Albert Einstein, which is, once you stop learning, you start dying. And that's where I felt like I was heading, was like, I was no longer a fire inside of me for what I was doing. And now it's all fire. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my challenges. I mentioned to you when we started this episode that like I let yesterday take hold of me. The interaction I had with the medical professional took hold of me all day. That was a day where my curiosity did not thrive. My beginner's mindset did not thrive. My commitment did not thrive. And here I am in a new day and back to being full of curiosity and being willing to do some new stuff. And I think that is so important to like keep making the decision over and over. And like you said at the beginning of our podcast episode today, really deciding to make the minute that happened not be the thing that determines your day, your week, your month, and being able to sort of move yourself forward. I could talk to you all day about this.
Every day.
All day. But we're out of time.
How does that happen? It feels like 5 minutes for me.
I know, every time. Thank you everyone so much for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear from you. If you have topics that you're interested in hearing about, let us know, send us an email. And we're so excited that you were here with us, and we'll see you the next time.
We're so grateful you decided to be with us during this episode. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and join us next time for more Real Talk.